McMillan. I'm just trying to see if I've passed in here or not.
Yeah, we can hear you. Roland is not here yet, but he'll be here in a minute. This is Julie Eckler.
Okay. Hey, Julie. Good to see you. This is Jeremy McMillan.
Hi, Jeremy. Is anyone else on the line?
I understand in addition to the members that are at the table, we also have Jeremy McMillan and Brad Johnson on the telephone. Are there any other members on the telephone? This meeting is intended to be broadcast. It's my understanding there's a little technical difficulty on the sound, but the meeting is being recorded for any people to check out at a later date. Okay. Third agenda item is the consideration and approval of the minutes from the November 5th, 2015 meeting. The draft minutes were sent out last week. Any questions or comments or corrections to the draft minutes? Do I hear a motion for approval?
I motion for approval.
Thank you. Kelly Shoemaker made the motion for approval. Diane Snyder made the motion to second that motion. Thank you very much. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Just a second before we move on to agenda item 4, I want to personally thank all the members for their time, energy, and effort that have been contributed the last few months to this, as well as to the coordinating board staff. Especially like to thank Mike Reeser for taking care and taking charge of our charge number 2. And then I really want to pat Pam England on the back for taking a significant load with charges 1 and 4. And we appreciate that very much. Charge 1, study and make recommendations for the appropriate funding levels for core, contact hour, and student success funding. We've had a lot of interaction the past meetings. We've had a lot of interaction via email with drafts and input and revisions to this recommendation. At this time, is there any discussion on the current draft funding recommendation? Anybody like to bring forward at this time? Quite a bit of information on charge 1, and like I said, a lot of adjusting and revision, and looking for all of you have it in your packet of materials of this draft funding recommendation for charge 1. If there's not any discussion, do I hear a motion to approve the community college funding recommendation? Pam England made the motion for approval. Kelly Shoemaker, second. Any further discussion on this part of the charge? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, thank you, sir. All those opposed, same sign. That part of the motion, part for charge 1 passes. We broke it down into also the discussion about state colleges. We had a lot of input into that the last couple of weeks, a lot of suggestions and some revisions that all of you have seen, and they're all in the packet as far as the draft. Do I hear any further, do I hear a motion for to approve the state college funding recommendation? Motion made by Pam England.
Second.
Seconded by Kelly Shoemaker. At this time, is there any discussion about that part of the charge? All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And I think it goes without saying there's a lot of work by a lot of people on that, and I appreciate it very much. Charge 2, study and make recommendations for the appropriate funding level for and refinement of Texas State Technical College System's return value funding formula. We discussed this at great length previous meetings. At the very past meeting, we discussed it at length. We actually approved it and adopted it at the last meeting. There was a small amount of rewording in recommendation regarding the rate-based recommendation and the funding amount. Is there any objection to the difference in the wording of that recommendation or any other suggestions? Seeing none, then we'll agree that we approved it at the last meeting. Charge 3, next on the agenda, study and make recommendations on the treatment of competency-based courses in formula allocations. We have in our materials the recommendations that for the draft proposal. Any further input or discussion in regard to competency-based draft? Do I hear a motion to approve the recommendations in regard to competency-based formula funding for community colleges? Oh, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Go right ahead.
I just saw it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
In the first section, sub-bullet that census date may conflict with the third sub-bullet that says we fund it.
Okay.
So I don't know. Because it implies they're two different things, at least my reading.
Dusty, this is Brad. I'm not able to hear anything except your voice.
Okay, just a second. Here it comes.
I didn't have my mic on. Okay, this is Diane Snyder. I was bringing up that in Charge 3, under the first section, the funding the competency-based education courses, the first sub-bullet references were reporting hours as of the census date, implying that's what we're going to do the funding based on. But the third sub-bullet refers to funding it where the student attained mastery of the subject, which might be after census date. So I thought we might need to reword the third sub-bullet to be consistent with our first. Unless I misunderstand the intent of the third one.
Yes, Roland, that first bullet was added in the most recent version.
I know we discussed it in email of wanting to be consistent with our contact hour funding, to be funded more at the census date, but we might not have looked at the full wording beneath it.
Those are very good points. Any further discussion or clarification on that suggestion?
Could you just take out that first sentence in that bullet?
Absolutely.
In the third bullet?
I mean, in the third bullet.
Third bullet, delete the first sentence, which it is the conflicting sentence that Diane is talking about. And then the rest of that is basically reminding or indicating that we'll exclude hours for CLEP test and for courses that they may have been, or competencies they may have been given credit for prior to entering the program. So basically, at that point, the suggestion is the recommendation, but deleting the first sentence of that third bullet. Does that make sense, Diane?
Yes, I think that would handle it.
And then keep in the exclude the hours where the student obtained mastery.
Right. Keep the next two.
And not funding credit obtained by CLEP.
Correct.
Keeping those intact?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I did want to add, because you asked me at the last meeting, that we did ask the two institutions that are doing competency-based about how many students they thought weren't completing. We didn't hear back from South Texas College, but we did hear about 13% from A&M Commerce. So I did want to share that information that you'd asked for, and also mention that Dr. Judith Sebesta is with us today if you do have any additional questions.
So after that discussion, it would be my understanding that we would be asking for a motion for that draft recommendation to be approved, except for the deletion of one sentence starting with fund hours through the formula. Is anybody willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody second? Motion made by Diane, seconded by Dr. Phil Rhodes. Any further discussion? I think that does offer clarification. If no other discussion, all those in favor of that motion, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Charge 4, study and make recommendations on the changes to the funding model that will enable institutions to meet the goals of 60 by 30 Texas. You've seen the draft recommendations. Those also had a lot of input the last few weeks. Some really good work by the subcommittee that Dr. England was working with. And so as you looked at those draft recommendations, any comments at this time?
This is Diane.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought I saw in one version an email that someone might have added some content in the student debt box for student success points, but I'm not seeing it here. Does that ring a bell to someone else? Okay. So we may be missing that one ad that's in that empty box.
Got a few people looking through some former versions, and the question or the discussion centers around whether on the matrix on success points, the blank box on student debt, whether there had actually been a recommendation or suggestion of verbiage for that area.
I had added in that box the text, reduce debt by increasing the number of students making steady academic progress, first college course, 15 hours, etc.
I agree with that ad. I think it reflects the importance that Success Points has to student debt also.
Okay. Do we have that verbiage? Do we need to hear that again?
I can
You can
add
find
that
it?
verbiage in.
Okay.
I can add that in. Dr. Rhodes, if you'll send me that verbiage, I'll be more than happy to include it.
Doctor, do you mind reading that again for the whole group?
It reads, reduce debt by increasing the number of students making steady academic progress, and then a parenthetical remark, first college course, 15 hours, etc., in the success points and student debt box in the matrix.
Okay. Everybody seems to be shaking their head of understanding, and we'll get that wording to Roland. Any further discussion of this draft? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarifying question about it. When complete, this document becomes a report from this committee to the coordinating board? Is that how it works?
Yes, this will go to the commissioner first.
Okay.
And then I am not sure, the commissioner will bring recommendations to the board. We'll make decisions about recommendations to go to the board. Will this report as is go to the board along with the final recommendations of the commissioner? Yes.
So that means that on the top of this page, the first bullet or the second bullet point that starts with we, then I assume that tone is proper and that the we that's contained there is this committee recommends to the co-board. Is that then what we are saying there?
I believe recommends to the commissioner.
Recommendation to the committee.
To the commissioner.
Okay,
So the commissioner is the person who's going to be receiving this
Yes, that this doesn't verbatim turn into a coordinating document. It is really a document that transmits concepts from this committee to the commissioner and the co-board.
That's correct, yes.
Just clarifying.
Yes, that's correct.
And in the prior year, when they issued their final report, in the appendix, it had a copy of our report, as well as the General University. So.
Very good points. Very good discussion.
So with that change, I recommend that we adopt Charge 4.
Motion made by Diane Snyder. Seconded by Pam Anglin. So the draft for Charge 4, which includes new verbiage under student debt column for student success points. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The recommendation, the draft committee report was also sent out to everybody, and that's what we've been going through, and it's, to my knowledge, we've made 2 additions, 1 deletion and 1 addition at this point. So do I hear a motion to approve the committee report as revised during this meeting? Motion by Michael Reeser, seconded by Kelly Shoemaker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Just for minutes.
Okay. We had a couple of, we've just approved the report as revised, and I would request, instead of going to another meeting or another round of emails, if you guys would have confidence that I would work with Roland to make sure those revisions were included. If we could have maybe a motion to give me that authority to go over that final edit with him.
Dr. Johnson, I make a motion that the chair have the final review and approval for any edits that were made today to the adopted recommendations and forward on to the final committee report.
Thank you for that motion. Do we have a second? Second by Michael Reeser. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Based on past experience with this committee and based on the past few months, I would think that we have accomplished our task to this point, and therefore, does anyone see a need for a meeting on January 7th, 2016? You think we need a motion that says we're not going to? Could we have that in the form of a motion that we're not going to meet on January 7th, 2016?
I move that the committee declare its work complete and that the draft that we've just approved as revised by the chairman along with co-board staff be the final version.
Second.
Motion made by Michael Reeser, seconded by Jeremy McMillan. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion or further business to come before this group today? If none, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Bye. Someone is going to make that motion, I'm sure. Pam Anglin makes that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Jeremy. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us today. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will adjourn. Thank everyone for the hard work.
Yes, and thank you from the coordinating board as well.